Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Brain Muffin at the Movies, I guess you could say, Scott Mendelson edition. Now, this is an article I saw a while ago, been meaning to get to, and I'm finally here. Holy cow. And now the dogs are going nuts. Probably barking at someone across the street. So, The Last Jedi really split the fan base. Now, I was one of those who was the Force Awakens, I was in the Force Awakens sucks camp from the start. The Last Jedi. By the time Last Jedi came out, I couldn't give two flips about Disney Star Wars, and then of course we get Rise of Skywalker. So Rise of Skywalker was a big retcon, and it tried to undo a lot of stuff from the Last Jedi. The Last Jedi ended a lot of stuff. The Last Jedi would have probably been better as a last movie, but anyways, so Scott's. If I remember correctly, he liked The Last Jedi. So this is why I'm not surprised by this. Didn't undo Force Awakens, which it did. It undid some things and ended many other things. So, but let's see where he's going. There's a difference between offering an unpopular answers to a previous film's questions and replacing the answers of a previous installment with your own in the next sequel. Now, I guess you could say that. You could say that The Last Jedi did give some answers to who is Rey. Her parents are a nobody. Who is Snoke? Well, it doesn't matter because we're going to kill him. But it really was just a slap in the face. It just basically was taking a large trout and slapping J.J. Abrams in the face with it. For 4 months after its domestic theatrical debut, not counting Thursday previews, for Rise of Skywalker, $512 million. Okay, so it got over more than $1 billion, more than I thought. Well, that's 1.1 total, I guess. Will be our last blockbuster movie of at least until Tenet in July 1st. Now this, maybe if the governors open up, if the government lets us go back to living our lives, I will use this once a month Rise of Skywalker post, which will continue until theaters reopen or until morale improves. To complain about Force Awakens, editors Mary Jo Markey and Marianne Brandon, especially Markey, arguing in a Mission Impossible podcast, the light the fuse, saying that The Last Jedi, slightly paraphrased, okay, so consciously undid the storytelling of The Force Awakens. Now, The Force Awakens, the story was a retelling of A New Hope. All the extra bells and whistles was just the flash. It was very poorly done and very poorly put together. We've been having this conversation for 2.5 years. It's one thing when critics, bloggers, pundits, random folks on social media and the like, I guess it's me, get in this debate. But when the folks actually working on the movies do, failing to understand what a retcon actually is as well. Okay. Used the narrative backbone of the first Star Wars movie to reintroduce the franchise, including a handful of original trilogy characters. Yep. Along with new would-be heroes and villains and a crowd-pleasing blockbuster adventure crowd-pleasing. Now, I think that's the thing. It was a joyride. It was all fluff and no substance, and that's why it doesn't have any staying power. And so I know it hit over $2 billion, but when you adjust for inflation, it falls way down the list, and it has no rewatchability. It just fell off a cliff. I felt that the film was too slavishly devoted to the structure and character beats of the original film. Again, because it's all JJ knows. I will agree with you, Scott. It was. To its emotional detriment. But my dad, who was able to fly out for the premiere of the son of his birthday, loved it. Plenty of my fellow critics, and then the new characters, Rey, Kylo Ren, Finn, became instant favorites with fans, young and old. Not true. Well, I guess maybe, but then by the time we get to the second movie, they're not there anymore. Because the toys didn't sell. This is how you know that the kids didn't like the new characters, because the toys didn't sell. Of the females, I think Rey sold the best. Finn didn't sell well. Some of the male characters did. Kylo Ren sold pretty well, but the only thing that really sold were the new remakes of the original characters. Became instant favorites. Okay, it's also teased character-specific character-specific reveals about its new heroine and its new villains, while ending with a big cliffhanger. Yeah, sort of. The Force Awakens ended with the Han Solo having been slain by his own son, Finn in a coma with Rey having realized that she had Force powers and tracking down a self-exiled ended. Okay. We weren't told if Rey's lineage or Snoke's origins had any bearing on the story. We weren't told if Finn would survive his lightsaber battle with Kylo, although we all presumed he would, and we certainly didn't know for sure why Luke, now looking for like an old elder hermit, had skipped out on the First Order versus Resistance battle and hidden away. Okay. Sire film before it left these threads dangling in the wind. Yeah, and right. That was horrible. He also had to agree that much of the speculation debate over Snoke's origin and Rey's parentage was not from the movie, but from the bloggers and writers who spent the next 2 years offering their best. Yeah, well, we tried to figure out what in the world was going on, right? If you go look at, Scott, if you go back to the first Star Wars movie called Star Wars, I know it was called A New Hope when it came out the second time, but not when it came out the first time when I was a kid. So we got enough backstory in the few minutes of exposition to understand you have the Emperor has risen to power on the, I think it needs to be more on the ashes of the Old Republic, but at least in the structure of the Old Republic, it really paralleled Hitler's rise to power in many ways, using Bismarck to gain favor and get into the Chancellery. Then you have Vader is, a former Jedi Knight seduced by the dark side. We get a little bit of what the Force is. Luke gets a little bit of introduction to it. We know that the Force is strong with Luke. We're not 100% sure. Well, we know his father killed by Vader. That's what we know, or at least that's what we're told. And yes, there are dangling participles here and there, but not in the main thread. We have Han Solo is a smuggler on the run from Jabba the Hutt. And bounty hunters looking for him because Guido finds him. So when we do The Force Awakens, we know that Finn was taken from his parents and was conditioned. We don't know who the very beginning of the opening. I forget his name. Not Landau. Anyways, we don't know how they got the map. We don't know. We just know they've got a map to Skywalker. We don't know why Luke is gone. We get a little bit of a hint from Han Solo. We obviously know that who Kylo Ren is, but we don't know who Rey is. And her being, that's part of the problem. I mean, Luke Skywalker, we're told, is the son of Anakin Skywalker, who was a Jedi Knight. So there's a little bit of it makes some sense that he has some Jedi powers. Anakin, we're told in the first movie that basically, he was conceived by the Force. Who I don't know who his father was. Smee just got pregnant. So we're told some information. We're told nothing in The Force Awakens of consequence other than Finn. Okay. But we don't know why he suddenly wakes up. And again, I say they because this is Kathleen Kennedy. She had to have a heroine in the movie that overshadows everybody, but they could have easily made Finn Force sensitive in the first one, and explored that more in the second one. That's part of why he broke his conditioning. But they're all racist, so they can't have a black guy do anything good. So that reception with the parents was partly part of her. The belonging you seek lies not behind you, but in front of you. Character arc personified in Finn and Han risking capture and death to rescue. Yeah, although she didn't need to be rescued, right? Now it's not 100% fair. It is 100% to not. It is 100% fair to not be happy with how things played out in Rian Johnson's Last Skywalker. The middle flick in the revealed that Rey's parents were nobodies who didn't even love her. Snoke was merely a stepping stone to Kylo seizing control of the First Order. That actually is reading a lot into it, but I actually see this is where I think Kylo should have just gone down the dark path and never been redeemed, because the ribbing he gets from Snoke does make him angry and does cause him to come to power a little bit more. Sure, maybe you wanted Rey to be a Skywalker or Palpatine. I just wanted her to make sense. Okay, I actually thought she was a Kenobi, like a niece of Ben Kenobi. Not, a direct descendant, but direct descendant from his grandfather or something. Maybe expected Snoke to have a backstory or reveal of some great long ago Star Wars character, Mace Windu. Reborn as a genocidal, dictator.
But there's a big difference between I didn't like Last Jedi answers to the questions posed, and Last Jedi rewrote. It retconned some stuff and then tossed a lot of things away. Plus, it was a poorly built movie. Just the structure of the movie was horrible. The Force Awakens no more gave us answers to the questions than it did Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes. Offered an explanation of the infamous "Now the apes rule our Earth" cliffhanger. Sort of, except you got to pay attention because the ape that's in the Lincoln Memorial is the guy that he had been fighting. So obviously he comes back in time. If you listen to the DVD commentary in the reimaging, which was still so disliked that it didn't spawn a sequel despite earning, you hear specifically stating that he intentionally didn't offer an explanation of why the statue is Tim Roth's ape baddie. Specifically, so whoever directed the next follow-up could offer their own answers. But they have to make sense. Just waving a hand and removing it is not something that makes sense. He left Luke on an island, put Finn in a coma, turned Poe from a dies in the first act cameo to the major supporting character. I don't know, major supporting. He's in the first act as he's in the third act. Okay, it's your ball now. Go play. In a sense, that was generous of him since it meant that The Last Jedi had more freedom to use that film however it chose. The problem is that Trevorrow essentially got sacked and Abrams came back to helm the third installment. Yeah. And the result was a retroactive retcon of The Last Jedi, which is true. Character beats and plot twists. No plot. There are no plot twists in The Last Jedi. There's plot smackings. I mean, I guess you can consider Rey being a nobody, although I don't know how Kylo would know. I think that they should just remove that part of it. And I don't think alleged script for the Star Wars is the best thing in the world, but it's at least said yes in a sequel to The Last Jedi. Rise of Skywalker essentially ignored The Last Jedi to its characters. Yeah, it did, because of all the garbage that was in The Last Jedi and all the money wasted on side quests and all kinds of things that made no sense or resulted in nothing. Rise of Skywalker opened with Rey being unsure of her Force abilities and lacking confidence in her own powers, again, because we needed an arc where Rey discovers herself, which we didn't get with her so-called training with Luke. That was part of the problem. She should have done something more along the lines of Yoda. But again, I hate all the beats that they pulled from the original trilogy, and this one tells your own story, dagnabbit. It also shows that there's lack of coordination and lack of planning here, and that Rian Johnson was given too much leeway and too much control where he could go. The Empire Strikes Back, it's still George's movie underneath, but it is written by other people and it is directed by someone else. Regression to a conventional hotshot pilot, Flyboy Sands earned maturity from his failed leadership in the Last Jedi. He wasn't a hotshot flyboy. That's the problem. That's the caricature that Ryan put him in, but that's not who he was in the beginning. He was a good pilot, but he was not a hotshot. He was a respected leader, and then you turn him into a buffoon. And then because he's a man. Retroactively making Rey into a Palpatine. Now, I will agree this was stupid, into a corked in a bottle clone while, making a clone Palpatine. But again, this is because Snoke died. I don't really know what JJ wanted to do with Snoke. I still think he should have been someone from the dark reaches of space. But again, killing him off was stupid. And again, Ryan did that just to spite JJ. The two of them don't like each other, and this is Kathleen's lack of leadership. Palpatine came back, blah, 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 bringing the Emperor back to life. I will agree, that was dumb. It does negate Anakin's sacrifice. It does. It is absolutely stupid. But, this shows what happens when you don't plan a story arc. Now, people will say the original trilogy wasn't planned, but there were pieces of the overall story. The original script was huge, and basically Lucas took this middle part. He wanted a big Wookiee battle. That's what we couldn't afford it. It's what we got the Ewoks in return. But it was one person's overall vision that drove that. And we didn't have that and we had it to that detriment in many ways, had it too much in the prequels, and here we didn't have it at all. It matters whether people working on the movies know that offering an unpopular or controversial answers to a previous film's mystery is not the same thing as rewriting or they turned Finn into a literal buffoon, okay? in comic relief that he wasn't. He was getting over and past in the Force Awakens. You turn Leia into a bit of a tyrant. You turn not shoot. What is his name? Poe Dameron into a mouthy pilot who's incapable and insubordinate in the beginning, which is not him. And so you've rewritten the characters already. So it is a retcon there, Scott. So I'm going to turn your own medicine against you. I don't know about somewhat controversial. It was horrible. It was bad storytelling, and it ended so many points with somewhat controversial parts because it was unexpected. Now I will say that Rian Johnson, he set up stuff in every scene just to mess with your expectations, subvert your expectations. Answers to questions teased in The Force Awakens. Okay, The Rise of Skywalker was somewhat controversial. Yeah, because it had nothing left. It had to rewrite a middle chapter to finish out the saga. And that is a big problem with The Last Jedi. It just goes poof, and then we're done. The Rise of Skywalker was somewhat, okay, walked back those it wasn't controversial at all, seemingly to retroactively retain the answers that J. Abrams had in his head while making The Force Awakens with the new answers that weren't popular, wasted valuable screen time, which could, again, I don't know if he really had that in his head, but he didn't like what Ryan did, and Ryan didn't like what he did. So the feeling is neutral. It did retcon and it undid portions of The Force Awakens, but it destroyed the Rise of Skywalker. We'll agree that the Rise of Skywalker destroyed the sequel trilogy completely. And so as far as I'm concerned, as bad as the prequels are, they have better storytelling, and Lucas does retcon some of the stuff, because when they go back and make the extra special version of The Empire Strikes Back, not only they put Ian McDiarmid in it, they change the dialogue because of things that he did in the prequels. And I get it that he's a perfectionist, and he doesn't. Again, I think George has in his head what he wants, but there's no way he can get it on paper. So he's an okay director, but he does need people who are much better than he is in other areas. I mean, the Star Wars was saved in the edit. We have to say that Star Wars was saved in the edit, and the crap that George put back in made it worse. So, and then some of this crap that he added just for its and shiggles made it even worse. So, Scott, I agree with you on some parts, but on a lot of parts I don't. And it's really just, it's a battle of two egos between Ryan and JJ, and that's what we end up with this crap. And so with Ryan ending lots of things and leaving JJ nothing, he had to reconstruct a middle, which meant retconning a lot of. But again, Ryan retconned the new characters, made Luke an old grump, which was not Luke's character at all. I fundamentally disagree with what he did to Luke Skywalker and every aspect in Luke Skywalker. Luke does say a couple poignant things, but it should not have been the way it was. And again, this is just if this was planned, it was extremely poor, but I don't think it was planned. I think this was just a complete and total F up, and it's all at Kathleen Kennedy's feet. So, well, do you agree with Scott's points? Do you think I'm just full of it? Do you think The Last Jedi didn't retcon anything, but Rise of Skywalker, I think we agree, did retcon a lot of things. I think this sequel trilogy is horrible. It'll be soon forgotten. It'll be flushed down the commode, and no one will ever care about it ever again. The original three will still be held in high regard. The prequels will get some more love, and who knows? Maybe The Mandalorian might save Disney's bacon, but I don't think so. I think Star Wars is done. I think it is done and done. Let me know in the comments below, and we will see you. Goodbye. I keep saying I want to find a format thing, but it doesn't matter. It'll get rearranged. All right, 3, 2, 1.